everybody, it's Rebecca and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're doing well. It's good to see you. I am here for a wrap-up video. It's been a really long time since I've done one of these. I'm very excited. So let's jump into it. So this is for January 2023 and I read 10 books, which is a lot for me. Recently have been averaging on the like 5, 8 maybe, but I got through 10. I will attribute that to the fact that like 4 of them were under 200 pages or something, so they were very fast. But still, maybe even more, might have been 5. So yeah, I read through 10 books, a lot of really good ones too. There were like 2 or 3 5s and a 4.5, a couple 4s, and a couple 3s. So a pretty good reading month. I'm just gonna start from the order that I read them just to make it easier. So I started off with Priory of the Orange Tree. I read all of these on my Kindle and one of them on audio, so I don't have physical books to hold up. I'm sorry. Priory of the Orange Tree, if I did have a physical book, it is gigantic, so I wouldn't be able to hold it up anyway because it's so heavy. This book is like 800 and something pages, and every time I'd go to Barnes & Noble, I'd be like, I want it, but I don't. I'm scared of it. I was so intimidated. But I got it from the library, and I put a poll up on Instagram about when I should read next, and that one won. So I read it, and it was really good. So I started it in December, and I finished it in January. So it was the first book I finished. It was phenomenal. If you don't know, basically it's dragons. There's dragons. There's good dragons and bad dragons. And the bad dragons are coming back. And they just want to like take over. They don't like humans. They want to take over the world. So the humans need to come together to prevent this from happening. So you have the East, and they are like, they love dragons. They have water dragons. They revere them as gods. They ride them. It's like a whole thing. But the West is like, no, 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 that's wrong. You're in consults with the enemy, even though they're not the same. So these two different groups of people and these different nations need to come together to defeat the evil fire-breathing dragons that are coming. The world building is amazing. The characters are amazing. There's a lot of diversity. There are women in roles of power, and it's not even questioned. Like, you're reading it and there's a guard. You can't assume the guard is a dude because there were women guards. So great. It's so refreshing. There's magic. There again are dragons. It's just phenomenal and I adored it, and I need to go read the new one that just came out or is coming out, but again, it's a gigantic one, so it will take me a while to get to it, but 5 stars. I started the year on a really great note with a 5-star read. So yes, it's intimidating, but it's worth it. Followed that with a really short read. It was an audio. It was called Misfits by Michaela Coel, and I had never heard of this book or this author. She is a screenwriter from the UK, and I saw this on Facebook or somewhere, and I decided to give it a go. She narrates it. So she gave a lecture at the Edinburgh International Television Festival, and it really resonated with people and also herself. So she decided to kind of turn it into this manifesto, this book. So again, it's very short, tells about her own stories of like dealing with racism and sexism and classism growing up and in the UK television industry. And it was just, it's very like enlightening, and also like it inspires you to like use your voice and stand up and out against oppression and what's wrong and the differences, and like stand up for equality, and also just to like accept to being a misfit and just own it. So it's a really great short read, and I gave it 4 stars. So a lot of my books are based on like what comes in from the library and has the most amount of people wanting to read it, so then I have to read it. Otherwise I won't get it back for months. So I read Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. It's about a witch named Mika, and she has to live in hiding because she's a witch in the UK, and she has like a little society of witches, but they're all like, you can't tell anybody, it's a secret kind of thing. So she's very lonely. She has to like hide this part of herself that like really speaks to who she is. Like, she just loves this part of herself and she's really good at it, this witchiness. But you know, she has to hide it, so that's hard. So then she makes like TikTok videos where she pretends to be like a fake witch, even though she's a real witch. And she gets noticed by a person who knows witchdom, magic? And he recruits her to come and teach and train these 3 young witches that he's living with. Train them how to like control their powers. So it's a story about like found family and like abandonment issues. It does have a romance, but I felt like the romance was the weakest part of the book and kind of unnecessary. I get it, is why it's in there, but like I didn't buy the romance. It's got some practical magic vibes in there too, so if you like practical magic and all of those other things, then I think you'd really enjoy it, and I gave it 4 stars. Oh, and I also want to say with this one, there is a little bit of like white saviorness in it, where this old white British lady adopts and saves these like Mika herself is from India or Pakistan, I can't remember. She's orphaned, and this like old white lady like rescues her, and a lot of these other girls that she's teaching, it was the same situation. So there's a little bit of that in there, so just be aware. For book club for my work, we read True Biz by Sara Novic, and this is a story about the deaf community. There is a residential school for deaf children, and there are 3 different characters that this is kind of following. So you have Charlie, who is deaf but was born to hearing parents, and so they have tried to use the cochlear implant for her and it's not working. And then you have Austin, and Austin is born deaf to a deaf family, but his new little sister might be hearing, so there's some issues there. And then you also have February, who is the principal of the school, and she is a CODA, or a child of deaf adults. And so you're dealing with these different approaches to the deaf community, to deafness in itself, and like the decision and the thoughts on using cochlear implants versus ASL. And I really learned a lot. I didn't know much about some of the like deaf education criticisms and issues and controversies, and the cochlear implant controversies as well. So I did learn a lot, and there are also some really cool after every chapter there's like some deaf history and some ASL, like it'll show you the hands signs, and I thought that was really, really, really cool. I did have some issues though, where this book, it feels like a YA, but it's not a YA, and some of the characters that I wanted to learn more about, I didn't, and I was getting more of this like teen drama with like blowing things up that just didn't really fit into this like narrative. So I wanted more of like February, the teacher. I wanted more of Austin's roommate who had a traumatic history. I didn't really care about Charlie so much. Like I felt like that might have been the wrong point of view, though I understand the purpose of it because of her background, but it was just interesting choices, and I felt like there was some unresolved issues at the end. And yeah, so I learned a lot about it. I think it's important to read, but I don't think it was like the best written. So I ended up giving this one a 3. Next up, I read The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, and I love Station 11. It's one of my favorite books. I reread it last year or the year before and loved it again. I've been meaning to read more of hers. I still haven't read Glass Hotel, which is the 2nd book, but this one I got it from the library, so I decided to go ahead and read it. It's also very short, and it feels a little bit more like short stories or vignettes that are all connected by like a theme and an event. So there is this event that happens throughout time at different spots in time where it's almost like a portal, wormhole, something opens up, and the people experiencing it, they hear an airship terminal as well as like a violin, and it's like one guy's in a forest in the 1800s, so it's very out of place, and it's heard at different points. So in the 1800s, like 2019 or 2020 or so, right before COVID, and then a little bit later, maybe like 2050, 2060, and then like in the 22s. So it's like 4 different times that are kind of connected, or 3 different times that are connected, and the one in the like most recent time, or 22 or whatever it is. Someone from there is investigating this thing. So there's time travel, there are thoughts on pandemics and society, and we're kind of viewing the world through the lens of time. And I thought it was just really cool. I just really love the way that she writes. It's just very beautiful and poetic. She makes me think a lot about the world and my thoughts and my place in it. I have heard that if you've read the second one, some of the characters are similar or repeat, and that this one feels underdeveloped compared to that one. But I haven't read the second one, so I really liked this one, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read Love and Saffron, which I saw on TikTok as like from an independent bookstore. I think it was like a top pick. And this one is an epistolary novel, so a novel told in letters it's in the 1960s, and it's between Joan, who's in her 20s, and she lives in LA, and Imogen, who is in her like late 50s in the Pacific Northwest, and she's a columnist for a paper, and that Joan has always read this column from her mother read it, and she read it. So she writes her a fan letter, and like gives her some saffron. And so it ends up being this like really beautiful friendship between these two women across place and ages, and their connection through food and like this exploring of taste. I thought that was like a really sweet story. I just felt like some of these letters were like a year apart, 6 months apart, and I feel like I was missing so much from these characters' lives. And then all of a sudden, like, something has changed, and it'll mention something and then we never hear it again, or it's like mentioned once again in passing. The ending is never really explained fully. It just kind of feels like this happened and then it's over. And so I felt like, as much as I love these like novels and letters, I wanted more letters, or I wanted more from it in some way. I don't know. It wasn't enough. It was underdeveloped, but it was really sweet and cute in this idea of like food bringing people together, and I did like that part of it. So I gave it 3.5 stars. After that, I read Gleanings by Neal Shusterman. This takes place in the world of the Scythe series, and this is a short story collection. So whereas the Scythe series kind of focused on a couple like handful key characters who are kind of at the center of this overthrow, this expands it, and there are short stories from Scythes from all over time, basically, since it began. And so you have some of the very first Scythes and some of the very last ones. It has some familiar characters and some unfamiliar characters, and I just really like the way that it portrays some of them as like being good people and some of them as being not so great people. I like the interactions and discussions on like art and life and immortality versus mortality, and seeing these sides in their relationships with those that they glean, as well as mortality and life. I just think it's really interesting. So most of the stories I did really enjoy. There's a couple here and there that I was kind of like, I'm ready for this one to be over. But for the most part, if you like the Scythedom and you like that series, then you should check this one out. So I gave it 5 stars. It could be like a 4.5, 5. I have been meaning to read the Marrow Thieves for a while. I get it from the library and I just keep putting it off. And finally I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna read it. There's somebody waiting for it. Let me just do it. And I was less than impressed, unfortunately. So I really like this concept, mainly because it features indigenous peoples of North America and how they are mistreated and how they are used. And I think that's really important. And it's good that they're at the forefront and the center of this story. It's like, yay, we have protagonists who are indigenous. However, the plot of this, the point of it is that it's in the future, there's been global warming, like the world is ravaged, but in addition to like all of the normal things that come with that, like, you know, borders and coastlines and wildfires and disasters and things like that, people have lost the ability to dream. And so they are slowly like going mad without being able to dream. And the only people who can dream are the indigenous peoples. And so they are being hunted and killed for their marrow to save the world from madness. The thing is, this is never explicitly really explained in the book. It's hinted at, it's kind of there, but it's told through like tribal traditions, which I thought was really interesting. But if I hadn't read the blurb on Goodreads, I would not have gotten any of it. I would have been like, wait, what is happening? And then I also just felt like the romance, again, unnecessary, underdeveloped. And then the ending, it ends, but there's not really an answer. I wanted to like this. And also, they keep traveling north. How far north can you go? It's been like 5 years. Don't you think you would have hit? Maybe I missed something. Again, I just felt like a lot of things were not very clear. And while I liked this found family idea again, and I liked the focus on Indigenous cultures and the erasing of Indigenous cultures and why that's so important that we don't do it, I just struggled with this book in general. I think it's important. I think that it'd be really good for teens. I think they would enjoy it a lot more than I did, but I only gave it a 3. All right, and to wrap up, I have 2 more, but they go together because it is the first and second book in a new series. That's all that's out right now, and it is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, and the follow-up, A Prayer for the Crown Shy. This is the Monk and Robot series, and the first 2 are out, waiting on book 3 now. Let's just say I loved it. I gave the first one a 5 and the second one a 4, but overall, I just adore it. It's a cozy sci-fi fantasy about a monk named Sibling Dex, and they decide that they no longer want to live their life in the city and they want to hear crickets. So they decide to become a tea monk, and they travel around the world, like sharing stories and listening and offering comfort to those who come to them. But finally they kind of get tired of this and they still want those crickets. So they're searching for purpose, they're searching for meaning. They go into the wild where they discover a robot, and robots in this world are conscious robots. They haven't been seen in centuries, and it comes up and has the question. It's been sent by the other robots to speak to humanity and find out, what do humans need? And so it's this like unlikely friendship, discussions about acceptance and what do we need versus what do we want, and finding our purpose. And it's just beautiful, and I loved it so much. It made me really happy. The second book, not as much. I felt like it wasn't quite as developed, some of the themes, and it didn't like hit me as much in the feels as the first one did. But overall, a really strong series. The covers are beautiful, and I just love them. I just love them. So yes, go read them. Maybe I just relate to it well because it's like, what is the trajectory of my life? What is my purpose? Do I have to have a purpose? That kind of thing. It's very existential. So if you're feeling all the existentialism, definitely go pick up this series. All right, well, that is it for my January wrap up, my January reads. Please let me know if you have read any of these books. Leave me some comments, give me some suggestions as well, if like, you know, a good one that would go well with this. Don't forget, February, I am reading for the Best Picture Readathon, so if you'd like to join me in that, please do. I have templates up on my Instagram, and I made a video as well you can go watch for all of the prompts. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you're here. And that's it for me today. I'll see you next time.